So so this month we have the British Jacob wool. And we have done Jacob wool in our club before. We carry Jacob as a regular fiber in our entire lineup in and but our regular Jacob is a domestic product from domestic sheep that comes in fingering and sport weight. And I'll talk a little bit later about the differences between the domestic and the British, but it is a very different product. So when we were exploring, the British Jacob came to us through one of our mills. Um, he was able to find a source for British Jacob that was available in a variety of shades, like 3 or 4 shades. And our domestic Jacob is a blend of entire fleece and is really only possible to do in one shade, which is kind of a medium or medium dark gray. So we were intrigued to see Jacob in different shades and to offer that to our club members. And what we ended up doing was getting some of it for the summer mystery knit along, and it was a huge hit with everyone. The which I don't know, that kind of surprised me because anyone who's knit with our domestic Jacob might have been kind of used to that, and I was afraid that people knitting with the British Jacob might feel like, oh, this is really different, doesn't even feel like the same sheep. But it is a soft and springy fiber, so people really did like it. And so we got some for Barn Box in this black shade, which black fleece is hard to come by. Not many breeds produce a truly dark fleece. And this is a black wool, but it is a on the brown side of black. It isn't a true charcoal black, but it is what in the industry is called a black fiber, and it doesn't really have the reddishness that a dark brown would have. It's more of a blue brown, and so that's, I guess, what pushes it into the black category. And it's really solid. So the British Jacob is a different, it has a different hand to the domestic Jacob that we normally that we have in our regular lineup. And so, but the fact that it was available in, you know, shades that were separate from each other was intriguing to us. And so the opportunity to get a black fiber, which we haven't had anything this dark in a really long time, was interesting to us. So for those who haven't been exposed to Jacob at all before, the the Jacob is a British breed of domestic sheep. They are a smaller sheep that is spotted, or piebald is another name for being spotted, and multi-horn or polycerated is the scientific term for that. And when I say multi-horn, I mean that they can have up to 6 horns. So both females and males have horns. Most Jacob lambs are born with the kind of sprouts. They quickly sprout around 4 horns. But like I said, some of them produce more and some of them only produce 2. And with the rams especially, the horns can grow really large, and they can even the horns tend to spiral around the face. The lower set will spiral around the face, and the upper set will often stick out at an angle or up straight. But the ones that curl or bend around the face can, even in an older sheep, grow to a length that will allow it to spiral twice. So they have this like incredible ability to grow horn. And having tough horns and feet is a kind of characteristic of sheep that live in the hills or live in a kind of harsher, more rocky terrain. And need to get around and through some tough kind of undergrowth or over rocks. So that's kind of where that trait comes from. The Jacob is generally considered to be an unimproved or primitive sheep, even to this day. So, whereas many sheep that we know about and have discussed have started out as primitive sheep, like the Gotland and the Shetland are good examples. They have been domesticated enough and bred enough that that today there are large flocks and large populations of those sheep that are quite different than their primitive ancestors and even their primitive sisters and brothers, that do still exist. But the Jacob sheep, while it was a popular sheep at different times in history, it never grew to a large worldwide population like some other sheep, or even a super wide population within Great Britain. So, and even the larger flocks that exist were not were just not improved, meaning that their breeding and crossbreeding and the raising of these sheep did not have a goal of making it multifunctional or a better meat sheep necessarily. So to this day, the Jacob does maintain kind of a primitive or unimproved status, and that is changing, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So just through the centuries, there wasn't a lot of selective breeding with the Jacob, and so it does maintain a lot of its original body type and kind of wildness and physical traits. They're distinguished from other breeds by their spotted fleece and their multiple horns. And I'm just going to bring up a couple pictures. When you see these sheep kind of in full fleece, like before they're shorn, those spotting patterns, first of all, there are no classified spotting patterns with these sheep like there are for Shetlands. We discussed before that Shetlands have different colors and different patterns of color that are produced on their bodies, and those patterns with the Shetland sheep and the Icelandic sheep, they fall into categories that are fairly predictable, like circles around the eyes and a white back and a dark belly, and et cetera, et cetera. But with Jacobs, their spotting pattern is totally unique to them, to each individual sheep. So no two sheep are really alike. And it's kind of an interesting trait because it allows breeders and farmers to identify individual sheep, and if they want to name them, or if one is lost from a flock, they can immediately figure out which one it is by whose pattern is kind of missing. So let me bring up, now these are Jacob sheep out in pasture, and you can see that each one is really unique and different. Some of them even, and the fleece colors range from a black and white combination to a black and like a lighter brown combination that is in the world of Jacobs. It's called lavender. So the lighter brown is lavender, and there's sort of a I believe there also is sort of a chocolatey, like a redder brown. So the lavender brown is kind of an ashy brown, and the regular brown is more of a reddish brown. Genetically, these are white sheep with dark spots. And you can see that these sheep have a longer fleece. They're a little bit fluffy. And the spots kind of shade and bleed through the coat. Now, when they're shorn, though, and I thought this was so interesting, I'm going to show you another photo of what they look like when they're shorn. So closer to the skin, the the spots are defined and more round. Let me get one more. Here we go. And you can see these really distinct polka dots almost on their skin, and the kind of very, very dark color. And the larger sheep here, I think that's a matter of sunlight. It kind of looks like some of those spots are streaked with a reddish brown and then a black brown, but I believe um that's a function of a shaft of sunlight that's kind of streaming into the area where they are. So this is a black and white Jacob. And the body type of the British Jacob is the, one of the things that distinguishes the British Jacob from the American Jacob is that the British Jacob is a larger animal, has had some improvement to it in the more recent decades. So its body type is longer and larger, and it has longer legs. Um, Jacobs always have, purebred Jacobs have those dark circles in the eye area and around the, ears and neck, dark ears. And then you can see that this one has a couple of horns kind of sprouting out of the same spot. So that's kind of interesting. The horns can be placed further apart or closer together. As far as I can tell, there's no real pattern to that. So the kind of physical characteristics of this sheep are that they have like I said, tough feet and horns, and that really helps them when they're, they their origins are as a hill sheep, or raised on farms with very rocky, kind of uneven terrain and a lot of scrub and things like that. So the horns and the feet help them to be able to tread on just about anything that's underfoot, and to kind of move obstacles aside, and to fend off predators as well with the horns. The head is a very distinct triangular shape, which is, it's not unheard of in other breeds, but it's not a common trait from one breed to the next. So you can see that face has a very triangular shape to it. The fleece grows on the upper body, and the belly has little fleece, and the legs are hairless. So, or not hairless, but there's no wool on the legs. And this again helps them to be able to run more easily, to be able to get through grasses and brush and things like that in their daily travels. Now the British breed is, as I said before, kind of has gone through some levels of improvement, because in Great Britain the Jacob sheep breeders wanted to begin producing sheep that had more potential for meat for market. When wool prices dropped so drastically in the middle of the 19th century, raising sheep just for wool became really not viable for farmers. So being able to have a more multi-purpose Jacob became a goal of the British Jacob breeders. Whereas in America, first of all, Jacobs are a more recent introduction to the American sheep population, in terms of, since the 1970s or so. I mean, not last year, but in America, Jacob breeders focus almost entirely on fleece production. And so the size of the sheep itself, the length of the body, isn't as important to them. They're just not focused on meat production. They really are focused on producing fine, soft, bouncy fleece. And so they keep their sheep a little bit smaller and they breed for that goal. So Jacob sheep are named for Jacob from the Bible, and many people believed for a long time that this breed descended from the same breed of sheep that is described in Genesis, but in the story of Jacob. But in truth, there's no genetic connection to that um, to that breed of sheep. And I like this quote. A sheep expert of the Israeli Agricultural Ministry said, Jacob sheep are related to Jacob the same as American Indians are related to India. There's just no connection except the name. However, the breed, in fact, genetically, the breed is connected to African sheep, and those sheep probably were bred more fully in the Middle East in, centuries ago. So origins of this sheep are definitely more African than, Middle Eastern, although they were brought to the Middle East and raised there. And then from there, a more viable story around how the Jacob sheep was disseminated is that they may have been brought to the UK from the Middle East via Spain. That when the Spanish Armada came through, that these sheep were part of that transport, and the Spanish brought them into Spain and then on to Great Britain. Spotted Jacob sheep can be seen in Egyptian wall paintings dating back to 1800 BC and are considered one of the ancient sheep breeds. And while the breed was named in the 20th century, again, DNA does not link, and it was named in the 20th century for the book of Genesis, for the sheep in the book of Genesis, but the DNA link is not there. Sheep have been domesticated for about 13,000 years on the planet Earth. and the earliest kind of, I guess, records of domestication or traces of DNA that can be found in archaeological diggings put the domestication of sheep back to the Middle East, to wild types of sheep that lived or existed in the Middle East. But they've gone through many, many changes and breed offshoots and, genetic improvement and today we have just an exponential number of sheep that have come from those original lines. So the Jacob having this really ancient sheep status is important, but it's also important to know that even an ancient sheep like that has had, at least some natural improvement. And as I said, in more recent decades, some breeding improvement in some lines of Jacob sheep. So again, the first spotted sheep appearing in England after the destruction of the Spanish Armada was in 1588. And quite a few breeds arrived in parts of Northern Europe from Africa by way of Spain and Italy, due to the strong trading ties that those countries had with Africa. Regardless of how they first arrived in England, Jacobs became quite popular by the mid-1700s. The Jacob is referred to as the Spanish sheep for much of its early recorded history, and it has been bred in England for at least 350 years. For a long time, this sheep was kept just to manage estates and parks. So they're really great at turning brush and tough grass and um, pretty inedible material into food. And so they are just natural lawn mowers and groundskeepers. And so, before, of course, the advent of mechanical equipment for those tasks, um, it would be impossible for uh, even a large crew of human beings to manage an estate, all the um, grasses and trees and shrubs, and keep them in perfect trimming order. It would be really difficult. And so many estates did use sheep for that purpose, and Jacob sheep were a good choice because they made really good use of the kind of forage that was available in some of the more remote parts of the estates and parks. Um, and of course, not only were they interesting to look at on the estates, but they are very disease resistant. They are easy and independent birthers, and they are very adaptable to different weather and grazing conditions. So that made them kind of ideal for wandering around and not needing a lot of attention on large tracts of land. So they quickly became the most popular park sheep in England. The first Jacobs were imported to North America during the mid 1900s, really as more of an exotic zoo exhibit. And, you know, again, on some large estates and tracts of lands for their kind of unusual appearance. Um, it isn't really known when the first Jacob sheep were imported specifically for agricultural purposes to the United States, but by the 1970s and 1980s, they were definitely being raised and bred here. And their popularity has increased over time in America. Um, in 1989, the Jacob Sheep Breeders Association created the first North American Jacob registry, which was 400 sheep. And most of the American Jacobs are descended from these sheep. Let's see. Now, getting back to, so let me just finish up on the American kind of arm of this. But the American Jacobs are an old world sheep, but like I said before, they have not undergone the improved breeding and outcrossing to satisfy a commercial marketplace. And so they have the smaller, more primitive body shape, and they're more slender and fine boned. And they do provide a nice lean carcass with little fat. It is flavorful, but just not big. Um, but but because of their smaller bone structure and and body weight, they can be stocked on a piece of land more heavily. So um, a farm can put 25 to 50% more of these smaller American Jacobs on a, per acre than they could if they were the larger British Jacob type. So and in addition, the ewes need less kind of supplemental feed when they are pregnant or nursing. So that's kind of a nice benefit of keeping the more unimproved primitive type. One of the reasons for keeping these sheep the way they are is that it allowed for more selective breeding, specifically for fiber in the American Jacobs. And as a result, the American wool is generally more sought after than the British type wool. Um, but I don't want to dismiss the British wool at all, because as we know, the people who have knit with it really like it. Now, the British Jacob is selected for a greater commercial productivity, including larger size and more kind of more uniform appearance. And that's where the populations between the two uh, lineages have diverged. The Livestock Conservancy in North America um, has the American Jacobs on a priority list, but the British Jacobs are not on that list. They're different enough and have been bred differently enough that they don't really fall in the same category. This is a really good example of the British Jacob, the improved. You can see how large how large it is. It's almost comical next to some of the American ones. And this is it. This is um the animal in its full fleece. So just before being shorn, you can see how long the fiber is. It's not a long wool, it's a medium length wool. But one of the interesting things that you can also see, even in this fleece, is that the the white fleece grows at a different, it has a different overall texture, and it grows at a different rate than the dark fleece. So the fleece will often have a kind of quilted look, where the dark fleece being springier and having, it's a little coarser and it has more body, will kind of puff out from the rest of the white fleece, and give the overall fleece that kind of quilted look. This fleece, when it's shorn, it's a British Jacob, and it's a big enough fleece that the colors can be separated and milled separately. Our fleeces that we get domestically are smaller, and there aren't as many. It's not as big a supply, and so our mill blends all the colors together to make our medium gray. The only difference, sometimes we can get a more lavender gray than a charcoal gray from the fleeces that we purchase. So that's a little different. We're getting the British Jacob from a co-op. There's a big enough Jacob population in Great Britain to have, first of all, they have a Jacob Society there. It's a longer standing breeders association, and they have a co-op where they're taking in a much greater quantity of wool, and so it can be actually separated into colors and milled separately, so that we can benefit from access to different levels of white, brown, and black. Modern British Jacobs are reared mainly for wool, meat, skins. The horns are used for buttons and decorative objects, and breeding stock. Jacobs differ from other British and North American primitive breeds in that they are single coated with a medium fine fleece. So while they have a lot of the same physical characteristics as Shetlands and Icelandics and Gotlands, they do differ in the fineness and quality of fleece that they produce. Lambs that are bred from the more primitive lines of sheep often are born with a coat of guard hairs, so they at birth are double coated, which, for those that don't remember or haven't heard that before, means that there are two different types of fiber in the fleece. One is straight and coarse and stiff, and the other is soft and downy and very fine. And usually the outer coat is the stiffer, kind of what it's water resistant, and it acts as kind of a shield over the very soft fiber, and also kind of like a casing over the soft fiber, so that the soft fiber can remain aerated and fluffy and provide insulation underneath that outer coat. Um, so that's what a double coated fleece or a double coated sheep is. And while Jacobs don't maintain this characteristic throughout their life, at birth they do have it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, you can think of several reasons why that might be. Um, Most of these sheep spent the whole year outside in kind of remote areas of estates and parks, and even in hill country, and had their young outside. And being a very independent kind of breed, the lambs were probably up and on their own, or spending large amounts of time by themselves or with each other, fairly quickly. And so staying warm and dry would be a priority for an animal like that, until it gained enough stature and um, a fully grown fleece of its own to keep warm. The birth coat is shed at 3 to 6 months of age, and by that time, a sheep is a fairly good size. The fleece of either type will contain Kemp, whether it's the American domestic or the British Jacob. You will see in your skein, and if your skein is handy, you'll see it right away, these white fibers that are in it. And when you pull one out, it's a fairly stiff, coarse fiber. That's called Kemp. It's not it's not a spinning fiber. It's just a third type of fiber that occurs in some fleeces of some sheep breeds, and it provides it is a protein fiber, but it doesn't have any compatibility with the rest of the fleece. It breaks easily. It's not colored. It's usually this, or it's always this white color, and it's very stiff. So it doesn't serve much of a purpose, but it's thought to have um it's thought that it comes from the just in sheep with more primitive traits, that it comes from the kind of the convergence of the outer fleece, the hair coat, and the inner fleece or the saw undercoat. It's I never can find really good information about the Kemp, except that when it's there, it's there. And it occurs mostly in the more primitive breeds, or breeds that have their roots in primitive sheep. So the Jacob Sheep Society of Great Britain, which was founded in 1969, has set as one of its goals the improvement of the Jacob sheep through breeding, as a way of encouraging interest in this breed beyond the UK. And I think it's kind of funny that the interest that it sparked beyond the UK at this point is that in America, they don't want that. So they're kind of sticking to the primitive size, shape, and characteristics of the sheep. But in other places where producing meat is important, and this sheep would thrive and be a good option for farmers in that location, the improvement is taking place through the interests of the Jacob Sheep Society. By setting a standard for registered sheep, they have been able to improve the size and the conformation, from what it used to be as the light, delicate, more not delicate, but slender Parkland sheep, to what is today this, what you see here, this sturdy commercial animal. Jacobs are shorn once a year, most often in the spring. I'm going to bring up another picture of the shorn. So you can see here, these are even more distinct kind of polka dots on its in its fleece. Now this question came up before, not in relation to Jacob, but in other sheep. So the skin is usually pinky white, where the fleece is pinky white. And if you dig down into the fleece in the black spots, the skin is darker in the black spots. So the black fleece does come from areas of dark skin. The fleece that it produces is generally so they're shorn once a year in the spring, and the average fleece is 4 to 6 pounds, which will yield somewhere around 2 to 4 pounds of clean, dry wool. The fleece is springy and open, and you can see that in the longer, when the fleece is longer, the hair hangs down in kind of ribbony locks. It's not super tightly crimped. It doesn't look like a dense brick. And it has little grease or lanolin. And like I said before, in some sheep, and particularly the British Jacobs, which they do have denser fleeces, the black wool grows longer or shorter. So it just grows differently than the white fleece and causes kind of a quilted look when they start to grow out their coat a little bit. So the Jacob wool does have something of a luster, and for that reason it's sought after by hand spinners, and the colors as well, from nearly white to nearly black, can be separated or blended after shearing and before spinning to produce different shades of yarn. And again, interesting for hand spinners that even from the same sheep, the light wool and the dark wool have different textures. So to me, this black Jacob is a really good example of that. For anyone who has knit with our domestic Jacob, when you first feel this fleece, it's immediately noticeable that this is a coarser and springier wool. Like it definitely has a lot of bounce to it. And for anyone who even worked with the Jacob Marls that we use in the mystery knit along over the summer, which was a blend of the black and a gray, so it had some really springy black fiber and less springy gray white blend of fiber, you'll notice that this skein feels different than your marled skein, which feels different than our domestic wool that we have here. It's, to me, very noticeable, to the point where when we got this, I was a little worried that people wouldn't like it, but so far it's getting a great reception. And I think, having experienced the performance of this fiber, that gives it a little bit of a pass in terms of softness. Now, the springiness of the fiber became really interesting when we knit this. I'm going to take this down for a sec. When we knit this sample of the Rust Belt River vest, when Barb originally blocked it, it was not behaving itself, and she was really frustrated. So it was like pulling up in the middle, and it didn't have, she's like, yours looks so nice within the BFL, like it just looks so sleek and beautiful, and mine doesn't. So I took it home and I reblocked it. I spread it out. It was all finished, but I was able to unbutton the sides and spread it out and pin it out, and I steamed it a little more aggressively than she probably did. I didn't press it or abuse it, but I did use more steam for more time, and I left it pinned out until it dried. And that really um, made the fabric sleeker and less textured looking, I guess. And then and it's just much better now. All the seam lines look really nice now, and the cables have a little shine to them. And so if you're knitting something larger with this yarn, this dark Jacob, keep that in mind, that you might need to block sweater pieces a little more aggressively than you would with something more delicate. It's not delicate. It can take it. You still don't want to be pressing with an iron on it, but it's okay to steam it a little more aggressively, or even pin it out a little larger than, slightly larger than what you're aiming for, to counteract some of that springiness. And when I say a little larger, I'm not talking about an inch even. I'm just talking about, give it stretch it an extra quarter inch or an extra 3/8 of an inch in on all sides, and steam it so that when you take the pins out, if it retracts a little bit, you'll still end up with the right size that you need. Um, so I thought that was a really interesting, kind of thing to know about this yarn, that it can take a little bit more blocking. Now, I also I knit these fingerless mitts in this yarn, and I didn't steam these. These are just wet blocked. But I did, when I wet blocked them, I did my usual I aggressively reshape them when they're wet, so that the stitches have a chance to all snap into like a uniform size and shape. And as these were drying, I went by that area several times and picked them up and reshaped them over and over again. And that really helps them have a nice, you can see that they really are a nice, consistent, not scrunchy looking at all. And the backside, the stockinette, has a really uniform appearance. It's a really consistent surface. So while this yarn has that kind of wily, wild springiness that wants to create stitches that fight with each other, once you can block it into submission so that it looks really smooth and sleek. And that won't hurt the animal. That won't hurt it at all. What was I going to say about this? Oh, one of the benefits of knitting this yarn into a project that has thick cables like this is that it gives you time while it's drying to reshape it and kind of coax it into that nice, smooth, consistent surface. Okay. Let's see. The wool itself has a medium fine micron diameter, and so it ranges from 26 to 37, and 26 is a fairly fine medium fiber. To give you a a measure, to measure that against, merino, to be classed as merino, it needs to be under 24 microns. So being 26 microns is really just outside of that range. And that would be like the finest Jacob. And the coarser ones, and some of them are very coarse, would be up in the near like 30 or 36. To be honest, I don't know what micron measurement this particular wool is, but I can pretty much predict that it's fairly heavier than the domestic one that we have, which is super fine. Let's see. And I think just like people found in this, I thought it was interesting when we worked with this yarn in the summer, or its sibling, the Marl Jacob. So many people just kept saying how good it felt to knit with, and that's like a characteristic of this wool. It's it's coarser than merino, and you definitely feel that it's coarser, but it's very, very pleasant to knit with. When it runs through your hands, it's not scratchy. It feels bouncy and has a depth to it that is very pleasing when you knit with it. So it's super lofty, and it has just enough luster that it will, for instance, highlight stitch patterns really nicely, even stockinette stitch. And so being a black yarn, that's a real benefit. You know, everyone always thinks, oh, patterns don't show up very well in black yarn. And I don't tend to agree with that, but having a little bit of luster in the wool will definitely um help that highlight the and improve the stitch definition in this yarn. Even though it's fairly woolly, it has a crisp um kind of lustrous effect in the final fabric. All right. That's kind of what I have in terms of info. And I talked a little bit about the design. When after I finished the vest, I just thought, oh, I love knitting that cable, and it's it's fingerless mitt season. And so I took my leftovers and made these fingerless mitts, which the pattern for this will be released this week when we release the Jacob to everyone. So whatever we have left of the Jacob is being released to everyone this week. So if you're thinking of getting a sweater quantity, you know, it could be getting low on, we could be getting low on inventory with this after it goes public. And then this pattern will be available. And if you haven't spent your credit yet, your pattern credit yet, you can get this pattern. You can work these mitts with this long cuff like this, or there's an option for a shorter cuff as well. And the top you can work long like this and fold it down so that there's a little cuff at the top if you like that. You know, or if you like having long fingerless mitts for when you're doing something outside, but you want to be able to fold them down and so you can handle things more easily, you have that option. I also knit a pair in our Fin Dandy sport. So this is the shorter cuff pair in Fin Dandy. This is the bare color of the 3-ply Fin Dandy. And I just made a short hem at the top of these so that it doesn't have the cuff at the top, but I felt like, you know, I didn't want it here. Actually I had leftovers of Fin Dandy, so I was kind of conserving a little bit to get the pair of mitts out. But even the shorter cuff is a fairly long cuff. It'll definitely go up, you know, a nice depth into the sleeve of a coat, and they're super comfortable. And with the cable along the back, they're nice and windproof on the back side. For, you know, I'm always wearing these when I walk the dogs, so the back of my hands will stay nice and warm, but the palm just has stockinette on it, so it makes it easy to handle things, to carry things without the bulky cable on the palm. So that's the Rust Belt River mitts that'll be available this week. And despite the fact that they have a pattern on them, they do go pretty quickly. The cable it looks complicated, but it's actually really easy. It's very intuitive. And I don't know if you can tell, but on the rows where the cables cross, they all cross in the same direction one way. And then on the next cross, they all cross the other way. So it's really easy to remember which way you're supposed to cross your cables. and all the cables in that row go in the same direction, and they're all 2x2 cable crosses, so they're really easy to do. And then in the in between rows, your cable ribs are just moving, so you have some traveling stitches. It's it's actually only a 16 row pattern, I think, or maybe it's even 12, and it's really easy to memorize. Questions?
Somebody in the chat asked about the yardage for the mitts.
Oh, let me look.
Most relevantly, will you be able to get a pair out of the one skein?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's relevant to me.
And in fact, like I said, I made these with leftovers. I think I had like literally half a skein of the Fin Dandy, and I made the shorter pair in a medium size, I think, with that. So the mitts have 3 sizes. The mitts have four sizes, sorry. And the long length ranges from, or it's 3 sizes, not 4. The long length ranges from 120 to 180 yards, and the regular length ranges from 100 yards to 150 yards. And I pretty much used, the 2 yarns are really different because the Fin Dandy 3-ply is denser and heavier, but the yardage worked out about the same for both mitts. Anybody else have a question?
I do.
Okay.
You say that this is black and it's not like the charcoal gray, and you're in the shop. Could you hold up a charcoal gray and next to the black so I could see the difference?
Yeah, let me grab the
And if you can hear me while you're doing that, do you pull out that Kemp as you knit with it and use it?
I didn't bother. Like, I didn't notice it that much when I was knitting. I noticed it more after I washed it, and it kind of more came to the surface. So this is the Muscle Shell Kent DK, which isn't as quite as dark as this black. And this is the
Huge.
the black Jacob. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
But it's like a charred charcoal brown, you know what I mean? Or like in makeup terms, like black brown mascara, it's really got a blackness to it. But this is what's called black for this breed.
Yeah, it's a lovely dark color. So.
It really is, yeah. And a lot of the British breeds can have colors as dark as this, but still in all, it's not, this depth of color in wool is not common. It's not easy to get in a quantity that we can do 400 skeins. So we always feel lucky when we can get it.
And then one last question. You said that when Barb made the vest, was it essentially the same yardage? I know she switched to V-neck from crew neck.
No, it's funny. It was exactly the same yardage, like within 5 yards of each other. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Because if I was looking at another sweater pattern that called for DK, or it has always been done in the DK, I can assume an equivalence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
especially if the original DK has similar characteristics. Like, the nice thing about the BFL DK is that it's a 2-ply yarn, a long wool yarn. It's a luster wool. It has that slightly fuzzy kind of characteristic. And so does this Jacob. Like, I think of them as being, they have parity. Whereas the Better Breakfast DK is an entirely different product. And even the Fin Dandy, while the wool itself is similar in character, the yarn, being the 3-ply yarn, is so much denser. It did surprise me that the mitts took the same amount of yardage in both yarns. That surprised me a little bit.
Okay, I was thinking about, multigrain, which maybe is done with Kent DK,
Uh-huh.
and wondered how that one would compare.
What I love about multigrain is that it is like this thick, cushy fabric that's warm and cozy. And I don't know if you would get that with this light of a sport yarn.
Okay,
So
I was thinking of it for a sister-in-law who runs really hot and does not like heavy,
oh, yeah.
but
Well,
she likes a work sweater.
uh-huh. Agreed. I would say Seafret or Wild Phillies or something like that might work. Um,
That's fine. Those are all good options. I was just
yeah,
wondering.
you can, and the other thing you could do with multigrain is, swatch with it and see what the stitch pattern looks like. And if you kind of still like the idea, but you feel like it needs to be knit tighter, like go to a smaller needle, you could knit it on a smaller needle, but make the next size up. And you'd end up with the same size pattern, at a tighter gauge. Does that make sense?
Okay, it does make sense, but that always feels like such a gamble, and I like to think I know a little more than that.
I actually do it a lot with my own, like I knit Seafret in Stone Soup because I love Stone Soup fingering, but I have quite a few patterns that it isn't really suited for on its, without tinkering. So I knit Seafret that way. Stone Soup fingering on a smaller needle in a bigger size, and I knit the over the water raglan, that one piece raglan. I did exactly the same thing. Barb knit the home office. She's knit several home office sweaters in sport weight yarn. Just, going to a slightly larger size. So, you can do it.
I think I'll probably stick with Seafret because it's a known and a favorite, and
Yeah, that would be great in this yarn. That would be really, really great. And the nice thing about a raglan like that in this yarn is that sometimes a raglan that's knit all in one piece without seams, even though I love them and I design quite a few of them and I put the cable on the raglan seams to keep it stable, it still wants to grow a little bit because there's no seams, So this kind of a yarn that has a lot of body and is very springy will actually do that pattern a favor because it will give body to the design that lacks a bit of structure. So that's
that is a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else?
Hi, Ann. I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, as I mentioned, I was thinking about doing her home office with this yarn,
Uh-huh.
and because it is a DK and all that.
It's actually a sport weight, just FYI.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's British Jacob Sport.
That's correct. So, do you
But
think?
but Barb has knit the home office sweater with several different of our sport weight yarns, like the Fin Dandy Sport and the I can't remember which other one, maybe the Jacob. Anyway, go ahead. You need to swatch.
Yeah, but my question is the finished size, because I'm always, for some reason, I'm easily confused. When it says finished size of 39.5 with 4 to 6 inches of positive ease, that means that it is for somebody that is possibly only 32.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I'm reading
The
that.
finished size is the finished size. That's what your garment measures when it's done.
Right.
And suggested fit is 4 to 6 inches of positive ease.
Gotcha.
So if you're a 36, you want to be then making a 40 or a 42 to fit, to give you some comfortable ease.
Oh, and I'm always layering, so you do want a little
Yeah, I mean, and lots of people who knit sweaters consistently know what how much ease they want in their garments.
Well, I haven't done that many sweaters yet. That's why
Yeah.
part of my questions.
No, it's fine to have questions. I think it's
Mhm.
good. And you should always ask your question because there's almost always someone else who also wants to know. But is too shy to ask or doesn't want to use my time or whatever. Um, and and on top of the ease thing, as a person new to the idea of it, you should know that finer weight sweaters usually need less ease than heavier weight sweaters because the yarn, the bulk of the fabric itself is going to feel like it's taking up room inside the sweater. That makes sense. You're so for me, I can like a fingering weight or lighter weight sweater looks better on me if it only has 2 or 3 inches of ease tops, or even 1 inch. But a DK sweater, I can get away with like 8 inches of ease or, or more because it just has a sturdier fabric and I don't get as lost inside it, I guess. I don't know. So that's just something to think about and notice in the clothes that you have. You can notice how much ease you prefer with different weights of fabric and kind of apply that to your choices, your choices when you're knitting for yourself.
So this,
So I have a,
Go ahead. You have a follow-up question?
just a quick follow-up. So the DK versus the sport weight, and this is such a lovely squishy yarn.
Mm-hmm.
Would you expect it to behave differently on blocking and all? Like it might block out larger than if it was a DK weight?
No. I mean, if you're knitting to gauge and you're getting the right gauge, it shouldn't block out larger.
Okay, so and definitely when you knit to do the gauge, wash and
Yep.
block it. Okay.
Oh, definitely. And that's where you might find a surprise, like, oh, I'm actually getting a looser gauge with the same size needle and it's a lighter weight yarn, because your stitches are spreading out more. And so that's where, your diligent swatching really comes in to play. For instance, the Rust Belt River vest was knit with DK BFL on size 7 needles, I think, or size 8 needles. And I think, and Barb got the same gauge with this sport weight yarn. I think she did use size 8 needles, but she might have even had to go to a 7. But it's a completely different kind of yarn, different weight, but she did get the same gauge with it.
Mhm.
So I have had the experience of even having to go down a size than on needles just to kind of control the yarn a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Who else?
well,
Renee?
I do have a couple questions. One is you were talking about ease with the different weights of yarn. So if you have like an Aran or a lighter bulky yarn in that, what type of ease is recommended then on something like that?
Well, it would be more. So I think usually it's something like 6 inches or 8 inches. And again, in men's clothes, usually they recommend a little more ease as well. I don't have that information right in front of me, but part of it is personal too. So that's why I say it's a good idea to notice when you wear the clothes you have, what weights of fabric are you wearing and how much ease is in those garments, and that can help you a lot. That's why, like in my sweater fitness class, I recommend going home and measuring some garments that you like the fit of and just seeing how those compare to your body measurements.
Yeah.
But like when you put a coat on, for instance, coats have a lot of extra ease because they are, you know, even a knit coat will be surprisingly bigger than you are. Because the fabric tends to be bulkier and stiffer.
Yeah, my thing is lately I've been using some Norwegian patterns and they don't put ease in,
Well, a
which
lot
is
of
frustrating.
but are they, when you say that, what do you mean?
They say like the finished chest size is this, but they don't have anything about the amount of ease that you might put in. And it's a lot of Norwegian patterns leave a lot to the knitter's knowledge.
Well, one thing you have to be careful of is that the wording can be confusing. So in my patterns, I always say the finished size, meaning the finished garment size is X. And then I give a suggested amount of ease to wear it with.
Yeah,
But
and they don't do
some
that.
some patterns phrase it differently and it means something different. So some patterns will say for chest size 36, meaning that the size is intended for someone who measures 36 inches. That doesn't mean that the sweater is 36 inches. That means that they have decided for you how much ease is going to be appropriate for your chest size. So that's, and you'll see one or the other. Like there's no standard in patterns or in magazines that tells you exactly what, you know, and they mean very different things. So for chest size 36 means something really different than finished size of 36. They're going to be
Yep.
different size garments.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, like in this one, then you go to the gauge and take the math, and it's like, okay, they really do mean that the sweater's finished size is that, but that's part of that. A different question I have though is on your sample there with the Rust Belt is you have a V-neck on there. Is it possible for you to put instructions? Is the one that you have the instructions for a crew neck?
It's both. It has
Oh, it
both.
is both. So they're both in there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That's all I hadn't
That's
looked
really
at
the-
that pattern yet.
Yeah, that's the only variation in this sweater is that you have a choice of necklines, a round or a V-neck.
Mhm. And I can't wait to see the buttons you picked out for me to use on it.
Oh,
You
we
ran out.
yeah, I know. Yeah, for those who haven't seen this yet, the side seam on both sides is buttoned. So it has buttons on both sides. So even though even though it's knit in pieces, the only seaming you have to do is up here on the shoulders, and the rest of it is all finished off with knitted edges. So it's kind of like a seamless sweater. I'm
looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. I just did that with Lillian the other day, and I can't remember now what we picked out. It wasn't Tracy. Tracy was in the running, but we picked maybe Margaret. I don't remember now. Anyway, they're on their way to you. Somebody else have a question? Jackie?
Oh, I know. I have. Okay, here's all right. When you talked about sometimes knitting us with Audrey, you were mentioning when you're switching between different yarns like DK and sport weight on a pattern, and you said, well, then you could go to smaller needles, but a larger size. I would love to have just a rough rule of thumb, like when would you do that and how would you know to do that? Like, is it
like
okay.
when I really want to use stone soup fingering for a sport weight sweater, that's when I would do that.
Okay, so a thinner yarn.
Yeah, if I can't get gauge or a fabric that I like, I might do that. So if I can only get a tighter gauge from the yarn I like, then I would do that. So if my stitch count and my row count were both too small,
Yeah.
then I would but I'm working on a needle size, and I'm working on a needle size that's also too small, or any, then I would go up a size in the pattern, and only for like raglans and circular yoke sweaters. This isn't something you want to do with a set in sleeve sweater.
Okay.
See, the design of a raglan or a circular yoke sweater is geometric. And so if you use less stitches and less rows, but you make a bigger shape, you can even out the fit,
Okay. Yeah.
but you can't do that with, and hear me everyone, you can't do that with seamed sweaters as successfully. It's more of a gamble with a seamed sweater
Okay.
because of the precision of the fit around the armhole, and because lots of times you're knitting to like a length instead of knitting a certain number of rows. Like with a raglan sweater, you're constructing a cone shaped yoke with a defined number of rows. When you finish your raglan shaping, you're done.
Mhm.
And so if those rows are shorter than they're supposed to be,
Mhm.
then your yoke will come out shorter than it's supposed to be. So if you're using smaller yarn and smaller needles and your yoke comes out shorter,
Yeah.
you can go up a size to compensate for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for explaining that. That it's just, oops, I've got a phone ringing there. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if all of that is over your head, then just don't worry about it. It's not something you have to do. It's not, you're not ready for that information yet, and we can always come back to it. And we often do. Like, this is something we talk about in our sweater knit alongs frequently enough. And by the way, we are starting, time for announcements. So we are starting a new sweater knit along in January. I believe it starts the first week of January. It's our Me Too or Me First sweater knit along. And if you probably got a card about it in your Barn Box package. So it'll take place on Zoom on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we're all going to knit sweaters until March. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody's going to learn a lot and enjoy each other's company and get through the winter knitting together. So that's one thing. Right now, we are in the midst of our Red Scarf fundraiser, which we do every year. It's a fundraiser. We create a scholarship every year for a foster kid aging out of the foster care system who wants to continue their education in college. So we do this every year. We produce a special collection of dyed yarns and a special collection of patterns that are dedicated to the cause. The entire price of the patterns, our knit along that we're having, and the ebooks all goes into the scholarship fund, plus a portion of the yarn sales. And the knit along is underway, and we have like 3 weeks to go. So if you haven't signed up yet, you still can. And 100% of your sign up fee will go into the scholarship fund. And we're all knitting small projects, and well, I'm knitting a big project, but everyone else is knitting small projects and giftable things, and telling funny Christmas stories and sharing recipes for holiday treats that don't take too much knitting time away.
Yeah.
And we always have a lot of fun in our knit alongs. So please join us and spread the word to other people. You don't have to be a knitter to take part in the fundraiser. We have cash donation classifications on our website that anyone can give, or someone might need a gift for a knitter, and buying some pretty yarn and a pattern or an ebook for them is both a good Christmas gift and helping our fund. We are behind on our fundraising, so if if someone hasn't heard of it yet, or you haven't gotten around to giving yet or buying a pattern, please know that 100% of this money goes to the student, and you know, it's a really, really worthy cause. The organization that we work with has a 100% rating on Charity Navigator, I think it's called, which rates charities for their how they use their money, etc. So this is just something I really believe in, and I'd be disappointed if we fell short again this year.
Annie, I have two things to say about that. First is that 100% is almost unheard of for a charity rating. That's quite amazing. And part of that is that it means that almost all of their funds or all of their funds go directly to the intended support. The second thing is that most states do not have mechanisms that are very helpful, if they have any mechanism at all, to assist children that age out of the foster care system. So you turn 18 and you're on the street, is what happens to a lot of these kids. They don't know much of the different issues to do. And so if they have a great foster care family, that family helps them with all the transitions that you would your normal child for getting an apartment, so on. But they do that. It's an ironic ending to trying to help a child. There's just not the support to have them move out of the high school system and on. And if they are behind a year in high school, they're homeless.
Agreed. And so this organization does, in addition to scholarship funds, which goes toward tuition and things, they provide emergency services for, because a lot of these students are living in apartments or some kind of, you know, self-supported housing, self-supported life. You know, they have jobs and they need cars, and they need to transport themselves around, and they need to take care of their health needs. And so this organization provides assistance for all manner of emergencies. They provide experiential assistance for kids in school by teaching them how to have the correct manners and to write notes, and to how to socialize with people that might be in walks of life and social status that they haven't bumped up against before, how to dress for an interview, how to conduct yourself at an interview. Like, they really support them in so many ways. And I just think it's super worthy. And I'll get off my soapbox now, but anyway, you know, if you find yourself with an extra $1 in your pocket this week and you could throw it at the scholarship, we'd be super appreciative. I always say to Michelle, if everybody who followed us on Instagram gave $1, like, we would have it all covered. It would be so cool. So
well, now that I know what it's about, you've got my support coming. Can you show us the yarns that you have for this? Is the blue behind you one of them, etc.?
Yeah. So let me just get we don't have a lot of the fingering weight left, but so normally we do like a red and green and white collection of yarn, but this year we did holiday blue, a silver gray, and white. So we have ornament, tinsel, and fairy lights. So the colors were all inspired by Christmas tree decorations. This is the worsted weight. The yarn comes in 2 weights, worsted and the fingering weight, which is a 2-ply fingering weight. And it's 100% BFL. You can see that beautiful BFL luster in it. The fingering weight has 420 yards. And the worsted weight has 210 yards. It's a 4-ply worsted weight. And then we invite a group of designers to contribute a design to to the Festivus collection. So we call our yarn Festivus, and we have, I think, 8 designers, including myself, and all of the patterns are available as a group in the Red Scarf ebook, which is $45 for something like 10 patterns. So that's a really good deal. And then you can buy the patterns as standalone pieces as well. If you go to our website and click on any of the Red Scarf banners or search for Red Scarf, you'll find the entire collection. This is
Can you
my,
show that silver again of the worsted? Because it looks more like a taupe on the camera right now.
yeah, it's got almost, some of it has like a greenish quality to it, like a metallic green. So this is the fingering and this is the worsted. And this is my shawl design. It's called A Little Tipsy, and it's knit with the fingering weight. It's a side to side lace and cable triangular shawl. So all the designers that participate are donating the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds from their pattern until January 1st. So all of us are giving anything we would have made on the pattern, we're giving to the scholarship fund. And then the ebook, like I said, is also being donated as well, plus the knit along proceeds, and then cash donations. We have like it's an octopus of possibilities of possible gift.
So it takes 1 skein for your shawl with the fingering?
It takes 2. Let me
2.
look for it. If you buy 2 skeins, you can make either size. You can make the tall size or the small size. And it's a nice big one. It's 72 to 84 inches across the top and like 26 to 30 inches down the point. It's a nice big one, but it's lightweight. Yeah.
Well, put aside 2 skeins. I'll order them up later today for the fingering of the blue, and I'm
Okay.
going to support this. Sometimes people, just very quick, sometimes people don't understand that we do need support of these kids in a variety of ways. They have something they have to fix with their car and they can't, and these scholarships provide that. Now they can go back to school or up to college, whereas before they would have now not been able to get to college or to high school. So this,
Or having to
even though it might not go
drop out.
just to that,
Yeah, having to drop out or take a
Yeah.
semester off because of simple life events that,
or just
Other-
missing a week and failing a test.
yeah. And also a lot of these kids are responsible for elderly relatives that didn't raise them, that they don't live with, but they're the only one that a family has to call on who might be able to help. I know I haven't been in a classroom in decades, but even when I was teaching, there were kids in grade school that came to school that were responsible for meals at home, for making sure everybody ate. And that just is the same now as it was 40 years ago. It's just incredible. So anyway, that's not what today's session is about, but we're in the middle of our fundraiser, and if you could support it, we would be most grateful. What else, you guys? What other announcements? We have patterns coming out all through December, like accessory type patterns. If you like the Rust Belt River vest, I'm working on a design for a knee length jumper version in a sport weight yarn. And of course, we have holiday barn box up for sale, which is fun every year. If you know a knitter that might want that, that is a standalone barn box experience. It's a one-time standalone experience that is created to hopefully entice people into joining us continuously. But if you know a knitter who might like it, it's a nice kit that includes a free pattern, with or without a tote bag. There's a stitch marker, there's a notebook, and it's intended to give someone the experience of BarnBox as just a one-time thing so that they can then maybe join us. What else? I'm gonna stop talking.
And I have a question about, well, I have 3 questions, but one is about
Okay.
the red scarf. Is there a mechanism, like if you wanted to make a donation in honor of somebody, is there a mechanism to notify them that you've done that? Or, I mean, it's easy enough to send them an email and say you've made a donation, but sometimes people have a
You're-
mechanism for that.
Just let us know. We can, so you would want us to let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
that's
do
fine.
that. If you leave a note in your order when you do it and back that up with an email to the Jeeves mailbox, we'll be happy to do that.
I just think
But-
that would be really nice for people who aren't related to knitting, but would really appreciate the idea of that kind of donation.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that as Christmas gifts in the past with like Heifer Foundation or
Mhm.
Heifer International, where you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
I buy a flock of chickens for my nieces and nephews, and they kind of get a kick out of it. And I feel like it's a more worthy cause than Fisher Price toys or something. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And then I have a question about the Jacob.
just make sure to provide us with the contact information that you want us to use. If you
Yeah.
want us to email them, then
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Regarding the Jacob sheep, do the shepherds sort the colors, or do they send that to the mill to be sorted, or do you know?
you know, knowing I think it can be either way. I think people can bring the wool in, but I would think that in in a co-op situation, they might want to do it on site because they might have a standard for that black, like
Yeah.
it doesn't get lighter than a certain amount. And so it can all be kind of filtered by the same eyes and hands.
Mhm.
But I know I know that if you're taking your wool as an independent farmer to a mill, anything the mill has to do is going to cost you money. So anything you
Right.
want, you need to do yourself. And
That
that's probably one of the reasons we don't have a co-op for Jacob wool. So that's one of the reasons we don't get separated wool, is that the farmers just don't have, the wherewithal to do it.
That makes perfect sense. Cool.
Yeah.
And then this is a completely different question. I got my latest spin-off magazine, and I was really surprised to know that in India they raise a lot of sheep. They
Yeah.
have like a real high percentage of the world's population of sheep. So if y'all didn't know that, I thought you should.
And
'Cause I
goats.
didn't. Oh,
Yeah. Well, goats really, and Angora goats really originated from the cradle of civilization, and actually all sheep, like I say, I mean, the most primitive breeds a lot of them are African in descent, and and Southeast Asia was mentioned as well in the Jacob. So that makes total sense.
Anne?
Yes.
I'm wondering, I thought you were out of the blue in the fingering.
It was showing up as out of stock on the website last week, but then when we actually counted the inventory, there were 30 skeins, and we left it listed as out of stock through Thanksgiving while we filled all the orders that came in, but there still were some. And to be honest, I think we really do only have 2, because we have 3.
Can I have the third, please? Because I had
Oh,
one and now I
there's
want to make that thing.
Right in front of me, there are 4.
Okay.
I have to look and see. Hang on. I have to look and see. Because Renee just put dibs on 2 of them, I think. Is that right,
Yeah, she
Renee?
did. She
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Give me like 1 second. Did you? Are you looking online at all? Does it say sold out now?
No, I just hadn't looked for it because it was sold out. And I thought, oh, I only had the one skein of the blue, and I'm like, oh, now I really want the second. Let me look. So in other words, if I can order it online, I should just order it.
I'll tell you, hang on, let's see.
And I don't mean to be keeping everybody else's time.
Okay. Sorry, my iPad is kind of slow. Okay. Looks like we have two.
I'm only seeing 2 online.
Yeah. It looks like we have 2 available, and we have, it says we have 3 on hand, but we have 4. So 1 is committed, 2 are available, those are for Renee. And then it says that, so it says that those 3 are all we have, but I literally have 4 in my lap. So I will put Sheila's name on that one. Sheila, do you have like a sense of, is it a lighter skein or darker skein?
Um,
I'm gonna pick Renee's out here.
yeah, I mean, it's, I don't really
Okay.
mean, it
Renee-
just was a beautiful blue.
Renee is getting these 2 skeins. One has lighter spots, but darker ones. One is real dark, one has dark and light. So those are for Renee. And then the 2 that are left are these 2. So one is like definitely like has lighter, and this one is more medium. Do you know what you have?
Could you give me 2 that match? Because I'm gonna make your
Yeah, that's what I'm
scarf
doing.
and a hat.
I'm giving you the 2 that match them best.
Oh, thank you.
I don't have unlimited. I have 4 possibilities, and I pulled out the 2 that match the best. And then Sheila's gonna pick from these last 2. And Sheila, you should try to order it. Isn't this exciting, you guys?
Yeah. Entertaining to me, yeah.
I just tried to look for it, and I'm not able to just put my hands right on
okay.
this game.
You should try to order it. And if you can order it, then you can let us know if it's a lighter skein or a darker one.
All right, that's what I'll do.
But can you look at the 2 I have, and then when you look at
I think it's the one to my left, so the one in your right hand.
this one?
I think it's, yeah, over the one that you just knocked with the
This
darker
one.
one. No, the other one,
Oh, this
No.
one.
the other one.
This one.
Oh, I was
There-
looking at the blue and the thing behind you.
Which is
Oh,
more like this one.
Yeah, it's really dark.
Sheila, if you can't get one, if it happens that you can't get it, I can give you
Oh,
one.
I found it.
Okay.
Really
That's
dark.
Dark, yeah.
So it's dark.
Can you hold it in the, I mean, I'm right under a light.
Well, I'm right under a light too.
Okay.
It's really dark. Yeah.
Is it,
I'm gonna go to the regular outdoor light.
I
'cause
mean,
that
when I pull
usually-
back, these are dark too, but they're still the blue.
Maybe the darkest one.
This is at natural light. Probably the darker of the 2 that you have would be best.
Okay. All right. All right. I think we got our choices made here. Anybody else have anything they need or need to look at or anything. I'm always happy to sell Festivus. It's my,
Thanks, Anne, for all the chat about the Jacob. They're so adorable.
yeah, they are. And they're super cute. And when
Yeah.
you see that shows, you can always pick it out and say, I know what that one is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the first breeds I learned to recognize because they're just so distinct looking and
Yeah.
the horns and everything. So
I mean, are they comfortable with each other and with those horns? I mean, you probably don't know that, but like they have to be careful with each other.
well, they're not like a close herding sheep. They spread out, they're used in situations where they spread out over a fairly large area. So they don't, but that is a drawback with a sheep that has horns is both handling them yourself
Yeah.
and herding them close together is challenging. They can hurt each other with their horns. So I imagine that's one of the reasons that they're used the way they are, and maybe one of the reasons that they're not largely improved, because to make improvements on a breed, you have to have a lot of control over the herd and
Mhm.
in close quarters, you have to be able to quarantine sheep from each other and things like that. And they're not an ideal breed for that. I mean,
Mhm.
if you go looking some of the pictures of the horns, like the horns are like a couple of feet out from their heads. They're huge, some of them.
Yeah.
I found this one photo from like 1939 or something where honestly, like you could hardly see the sheep's head in the photo for the size of its horns. It was so
That's
big.
crazy. Yeah.
You wonder how it
Yeah.
carries it around.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they have
One of
nice
the-
straight backs and sturdy legs. So
Yeah.
One of the photos you showed today had pretty long horns.
yeah,
Almost like a longhorn cattle, you know?
yeah. Let me see if I can find. I remember that I did pull one. It might be this one. So this one has pretty big set of horns. Look at that. And that's
Oh, wow.
quite a span.
Wow.
And then it has the short set right next to its face that you can see someone has filed off the tips because they would be heading for the eyes, the sharp tips are kind of filed down.
Yeah, or poking through the cheek.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. And I saw that on a program where a ram had been neglected and its horn had started going through its cheek, and they actually had to amputate the horn, not at the base, but down a bit. They had to cut it short so that they could pull it out, and kind of stitch it up. Poor thing. Anyway. All right. So Sheila, you're gonna try to order your skein, right? Were you able to? Oh, you're muted.
I'm gonna order it as soon as I get off this Zoom.
Okay, but Renee ordered yours already, right?
I'm in the process of the ordering because I want to look at the ebook and see about other things.
Okay.
Or so that I'm going to do it in about an hour. It's going to
Okay.
take me just a few minutes to
Yeah,
get
we're not
to
trying to,
that.
we're not trying to push. I just don't want Sheila's order to take away from your order, but it's possible. Well, I'm not allowed to add stuff or subtract from the website because I'm not like the right personnel for that. I mean,
No, I'll do it right now.
it's not that people don't trust me. It's just that it really should only be done by one person, who is David. So, I'm going to explain the situation to him.
Sheila, I also have possibly an extra skein. I can't remember and I can't go look for it right this second.
Oh,
So if we have emails, we can exchange. Have we ever done that before?
I
don't-
don't think I've ever done that with you, Audrey.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll send a message to you right now.
Well, the
Yeah.
thing isn't that we don't have the yarn, Audrey. The thing is that it's not listed, so that doesn't mean that it's sold. It just means that we have kept a cushion of some type. So,
Okay, that's
so-
fine. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
give her the possibility should she
Okay.
want.
Well, and I'm
okay.
just looking, Jean also has offered to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, you guys. You're so darn nice.
So just tell me like the next time, and Audrey, if it didn't work out, then you have an
Yeah.
option.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
Sheila, I just sent you my email, and Jean, I already have yours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't have Jean's, but I can get it from Audrey because I'm putting mine into hers right now.
You
Okay.
can
And
give it to her. You want me
and
to
I'll-
just put it in the mail, I'll put it in this chat, Sheila.
I'm gonna take these foreskeins into Lillian's office and put names on them as to who they are to be shipped
Yep.
to when she comes in tomorrow.
Yep. So Anne, if by the time an hour goes by and there's nothing left on site for the blue, then David can just bill me separate for that because I'll have an order of yarn I'm going to put in to go with this. And you
Okay.
could all just put it in one postage thing, please.
Okay,
Just to prevent double postage.
okay. That
Thank
sounds
you.
good. We'll take the post, if there's extra postage, we'll put it in the scholarship fund. How does that sound?
That actually sounds very fine because I know how challenging this is.
All right, you guys, I won't keep you any longer. I'll see many of you on Wednesday and I can't wait, and have a good Sunday afternoon, and see you next time.